Our next two presenters, well, the first of the two will be Dr. Stephen Brown. Dr. Brown is a physician with sports injuries and family medicine at the University of Tennessee in Jackson. Stephen played basketball for his dad at Dyersburg High School. And also want to introduce another presenter for Coach Brown will be Ross Shelton, a member of the 2016 MCHS Sports Hall of Fame. Ross has the distinction of holding the family assist record after playing in only one game at McNairy Central. Hope you got that. You get it? Most of those Browns like to shoot, but Ross was an assist leader. So please welcome Ross Shelton and Dr. Stephen Brown.
Thank you. It's great to be back. I'd like to say congratulations to all the inductees, and it's so great to see so many familiar faces. I was raised in this school, even though we moved away. The first 12 years of my life and some of my greatest memories are running through these halls. So my name is Stephen Brown, and it's an honor and a privilege to get to introduce you all to the next inductee into the McNairy Central Sports Hall of Fame. I have known Brian Brown literally my entire life. My cousin Ross will get up here in a second and remind you all of his coaching prowess. But as someone who was there through most all of it, the long summer leagues, individual camps, fall coaching clinics, elementary and middle school exhibitions when Miss Forsyth's Bobcat was destroyed at Selmer Elementary, middle school games, practices, scouting trips, and late night film and mainly snack sessions with MacArthur and Wilbanks on Cox Lane, I want to take a second and say this. I don't know if you all can truly appreciate all of the hours, dedication, blood, sweat, and tears that Coach Brown and my mom poured into the McNairy Central basketball program. I can say without a shadow of doubt in my mind that no one has dedicated more time and effort or worked as tirelessly to promote the development of men's basketball at McNairy Central than my father. As a student athlete, he attended McNairy Central from 1973 until 1977. He was a two-sport varsity letterman for all 4 years on the Hill. During his baseball career, he was a 3-year starter at shortstop. His teams finished as district runners-up during his junior season and district champions and region runner-ups as a senior. He was selected to both the all-district and all-district tournament team during that senior season. He was also selected a Who's Who All-American in baseball for his efforts. One of his most impressive statistics on the diamond was that as a hitter, he struck out 0 times over the entire 1977 season. His baseball coach at the time was the revered and Hall of Fame member Bill Webb. Coach Webb said about Brian, he's the most competitive player I've ever coached. I truly enjoyed coaching him and knew after watching him develop as a player at Mickey and Adamsville that he would be an incredible player at the high school level and beyond. I love Brian dearly and have followed his career closely. He truly deserves to be remembered as a great player and coach. As a member of the MCHS basketball team, he was a 4-year varsity letterman, where he served as the starting point guard his final 3 seasons. His teams won a combined 64 games. During his sophomore season, the team finished as regular season district champions, and during his senior year, they were district tournament runner-up. He was named to the all-district team in both his junior and senior seasons and named to the district tournament team his senior year. He was selected as the team's MVP and was the leading scorer for both his junior and senior seasons. He was named to the All-West Tennessee basketball team and was honorable mention All-State. He is a member of the 1,000 Point Club at McNairy Central High School, where he finished with a total of 1,126 points and did so without the advantage of the 3-point shot. As an aside, he is the only white member of the 1,000 Point Club. During his time at McNairy Central, he was coached by Coach Lefty Skelton and Joe Dan Wooten. Coach Wooten was quoted as saying, "I believe Brian wants to win more than any player I've ever coached." He was described as a sharp ball handler, steady shooter, and hard-nosed defender. Brian also excelled off the court and exemplified what it meant to be a student athlete. He served as class president for 2 years, was a member of the Beta Club, and graduated 24th in his class of 260. He was nominated for both Mr. MCHS and Most Athletic, and not surprisingly, he chose to be formally recognized as Most Athletic. Dad, I can't put into words how incredibly proud the family and I are of you. I've been blessed to call you Coach, Dad, and now have my kids call you Papa. Our family knows how hard you've worked your entire career to not only be a great player and coach, but also a great man to affect such positive change in the lives of your players and in the McNairy Central community. You are so incredibly deserving of this honor, and I love you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Brown. That still feels weird to say that. To me, he'll always be Stephen, and to the rest of Coach Brown's player, he's the little kid that would yell out, "Daddy, he didn't touch the line," which usually meant another suicide for everybody. Well, it's a privilege to be here again tonight to honor all of these very deserving inductees. I'd just like to start by welcoming them to the Hall of Fame and thanking each of them for their contributions to McNairy Central's incredible history. I look forward to this time each year just to learn about the great men and women that have worn the blue and gold. And it's also pretty scary what Jeff York can dig up about people. Tonight's a special night for me. Not only do I get to induct an uncle, but also one of the best coaches I've ever played for or even seen coach. Coach Brown, that's what I'll call him for tonight, had many attributes that made a great coach. Number one, he hates losing. And that's something I always appreciated because I hated it too. I can remember many nights after a loss, he would call me at 2 in the morning because he was up watching film and he could never sleep after a loss. And this is when I was playing for him in high school. But he knew I wouldn't be asleep either. I've heard it said many times that great coaches hate losing more than they love winning. And I believe that is exactly the way Coach Brown is wired. Number two, hardworking. I don't think I've ever seen anybody work as hard coaching as Coach Brown. For many people, all you get to see is the end result on game day. But if somebody that's actually worked with him, it is exhausting trying to keep up with him. From fundraising to scouting to cleaning the locker rooms, he puts everything he has into a program. The great thing about being a hard-working coach is you can demand that from your players. And that's something that you could always say about his teams. They worked hard and they played hard. Next, preparation. Coach Brown's preparation was second to none. Some of you may know Hall of Fame coach Hubie Smith. He coached at Bartlett for 19 years and also at the University of Memphis. He was once quoted saying that Coach Brown's teams are the most prepared teams he's ever coached against. He said, "They don't have any talent this year, but I don't want to play Coach Brown when he gets it." This was after a close loss early in Coach Brown's career, and it was the last time he ever lost to Bartlett. For those who haven't experienced a Coach Brown practice, I can tell you that he still hand writes his practice plan each day, and he follows it to the minute. I can remember getting scouting reports as a player that had our opponent's name, height, shooting hand, their strengths, their weaknesses. He'd also list out a detailed copy of all their plays and actually what they by their name. Nothing's quite as demoralizing as an offense calling out a play and the defense beats them to their spot. My best memory of this, we were playing Chester County my junior year. They had a great player named Eric Jones. He ended up being the district player of the year. He came in averaging about 25 points a game. Before the game, Coach Brown had prepped us when you every move he had, every shot he'd take. No matter where he went on the floor, we had two guys waiting on him. By the fourth quarter, we're up by 25 points. Eric Jones is sitting on 2 points for the game. He walks to the bench, looks at Coach Brown and says, "Could you please call off the dogs?" And Coach Brown does. He takes us out of the game. He puts the JV in, sets them back in his zone, and Eric scores 12 points in the next 2 minutes. The last thing, and probably the best thing about Coach Brown, was his adaptability. Many people will tell you that Coach Brown had one coaching style, old school with lots of yelling. And as a player, that's the way it felt sometimes. But Coach Brown has always been a coach who could adapt to his players and his teams. He was a master of getting every bit of talent out of each player he coached. He knew how to build relationships and how to motivate you to be the best version of yourself. He was also a bit of a cut-up when the time was right. Not many coaches can push you to your limit 1 minute and then have you falling over on the floor laughing the next. I've talked to many former players over the years, and they all say the same thing. He was really hard on me, but I loved playing for him. A good example of Coach Brown's ability to adapt to a team was in 1997. To this day, I'll still argue that it's one of the best teams he's ever coached. The starting lineup that year was Scott Shelton, Casey Forsyth, Brian Robinson, John Finlayson, and myself as a sophomore. Scott and Casey were really baseball players. They both went to play baseball in college. We all know John was a football player, went on to UT. I played football at Cumberland. So Brian Robinson was really the only starter that was a basketball-only kid, and he went on to play at Freed-Hardeman. We were a lot smaller and a lot less athletic than the teams in the early 90s that Coach Brown had. In fact, I don't think we had a single player that could dunk that year. But Coach Brown was able to get us to play hard, to play smart, and rely on one another. We finished that season 25-4. And I don't know of many other teams that have come through that played as well together as a team, thanks to Coach Brown. Coach Brown was also one of the best I've seen at adapting during the games. Lots of coaches can come up with good game plans, but what really counts is how you coach when things change. When I coached with him, I got the chance to see firsthand that he's always 3 plays ahead. He always seems to be able to call the right play or put his team in the right spot for success. I've heard people say it before that good coaches can make adjustments, but great coaches can adjust to your adjustments. That is what made Coach Brown, in my opinion, one of the best coaches we've seen at this school. Now, before I bring him up here, I want to list a few of his coaching accomplishments, both at McNary and over his entire career. He started his career at Hollis Powell Junior High. He was there for 2 years, and he won 1 county championship. He then came to Selmer Middle School, where he coached the boys and girls teams for 3 years. He won all 6 county championships. In 1987, he came to McNary Central, and then he came back again here in 2015 to end his career. In total, he coached 15 seasons at McNary with a record of 298 and 146. That's an average of 20 wins a season. During that time, he brought McNary Central 6 regular season district championships, 7 district tournament championships, 3 region championships, 6 sub-states, 2 state tournament appearances. At Dyersburg, he coached 8 seasons, had a record of 144 and 99. And at Hardin County, he coached 3 seasons with a record of 51 and 32. So in total, he finished his coaching career with 594 wins and several championship banners. Some personal achievements and awards he's won over the years. He was a 6-time Best of the West Coach of the Year. He was a 7-time District Coach of the Year. He was the West Tennessee Coach of the Year, both in 1991 and 2013. And the final achievement that I think every parent or every fan of McNary should always want in a high school coach. In 26 years of coaching, he sent 24 kids to college on scholarship. At this time, I'd like to present to you our 2019 Hall of Fame inductee, both for coach and player, Brian Brown.
Well, good evening. Have y'all noticed some of the older people in the crowd that as we've gotten older, the letters have gotten smaller? So I may need these glasses. First of all, I'd like to thank everyone for coming, but I'd like to reference a young lady who's being inducted tonight. As Ms. Glover would tell you, I prided myself on being a Southern gentleman, and I like to practice opening doors for women. You know, just a Southern thing that Martha insisted we do. Of course, Mom always taught me to do that. And so I would always open the door for a woman, and as they walk through, I'd just casually say, age before beauty. And there was this one lady who's being inducted tonight. She always had this comment back to me. Instead of saying, oh, thank you, Coach Brown. You're so nice, Coach Brown. She'd say, well, you know, beauty was a horse. And that young lady was Miss Delise Tigg. So I've got a few things to say about her tonight. I would like to thank the committee that started this program. It's really special. You know, there's some in the surrounding areas, usually like Jackson, Madison County, and you have Hardin County and other places that do this. But for us to have our own Hall of Fame here at McNairy Central, I'd like to thank the committee. I know Mike's been real involved. Lisa, she's the guru. She's the one that does the things behind the scenes. Jeff York, I'm so glad that y'all inducted him a year or so ago. Jeff helped Jerry and I years ago when I was here the first time start to compile all these records that if you look that are abundant now in all sports. But Jerry and I wanted something that where we could cherish and remember the past teams and players. So we started this, I guess what, Jerry, late 80s or something, trying to pull. Of course, Jerry's been around since the start of time. You know, like Bobby Randolph used to say, her and Jerry are older than the building, and they really are. They've been here longer than the building. But Jeff does a tremendous job with all the things. So all those numbers and statistics, I want to personally thank Jeff for helping make this happen for us. I'd like to thank Billy Joe Glover. He was the one that gave me my first opportunity to coach in high school in 1987-88. And Martha and I can remember, and Bobby and Jerry may remember, that there was a veteran coach or two that had applied for the position that some people at that time wanted to probably get the job and maybe had been more deserving. But I'd been at the middle school and had coached a lot of these kids, and I was in the system, and I appreciate Billy Joe and Martha and that group that gave me that opportunity to come. Martha was my principal most of the time. David Hurst was the first year or so, but Martha was a great support system. We shared a lot of laughs and a lot of good times, but she was so supportive of not only you as a teacher, but also as a coach. So I'd like to personally thank her. I'd like to thank the late James Horton. Coach Horton moved from the coaching position up to the athletic director, and I couldn't have had a better friend and supporter. And that's not always the case sometimes when the former coach is in the building. But Coach Horton did a tremendous job supporting our program as he did with the other programs. Coach Danny Day was here for the rest of the time as athletic director. And I'd like to give Danny a shout out as a player. Coach Webb was a great man and a great coach, but Danny Day taught me how to hit a curveball when I was 17 years old. I just wish I had learned that a year or two earlier. My numbers in high school would probably been a little bit better. But Danny was a great baseball coach. I played for him in summer league, but he was a great athletic director, and I appreciate everything he did. Jerry Lott, I can't say enough about him, and Linda. Not only were they coaching friends, they were friends. We spent a lot of time on the Tennessee River when Christy and Kevin were young and our boys were young. And Jerry was a tremendous mentor for me. I learned a lot from Jerry by watching him in practice. We used to, when I was at the middle school, he'd bring his high school girls to the middle school and practice against my junior high boys. And so I learned, I had that advantage of having that experience working with Jerry. And he was always real supportive for our boys program. Linda was a great support service. When I started in 1987 was when we had our first child, Stephen, and we had 3 pretty quick. I think Laura decided she wanted to have all her family within the first couple of years, so we did that. So inevitably, Laura never missed a game. And the good thing about the home games, we had that little room called the ballroom, and that became our daycare center. So Linda would step in every now and then and help kind of watch the boys play and send Christy in there to play so Laura could watch the game. So we appreciate those things that Linda did. I'd like to thank our assistant coaches. Bill Wilbanks started when I did here as assistant coach. Bill was one of those guys that pick up the phone and call him and say, Bill, we need to go to Covington to scout. He said, pick me up in 15 minutes. He's ready to go. I learned a lot of basketball from Bill, but I also learned a lot about how to manage people, young people, and I appreciate all the things that he did over the years in helping our program. Our other assistants, Randy Roten, who's still a teacher here and works in the system. Randy and I played high school ball together. He was a tremendous asset the years that he worked with us. Jim MacArthur was a longtime assistant. My sister Belinda, she helped me the second go around here. She's what I call the director of basketball operations. Basically, she typed my material because I couldn't type. Even though Ronnie Teague and Tommy Webb tried to teach me in 1975 how to type, my skills were not that good. But Belinda took care of all that work. And I'll say this about her. I have forgiven her. I'll tell you a real quick story. We lived at Mickey on Joe Dillon Road, and my mom would take Belinda and I, when we were real young, to this couple. They'd keep us during the day, and they loved Belinda. And so at the end of the day, Mother picked us up and said, Belinda, said, you're a sweet little girl. Won't you just stay with us? And Belinda said, oh, no, I can't stay, but you can have Brian. So I've finally forgiven her for doing that, but she was great help as well. Also, Assistant Ross had the fortune of coaching him, but also had the good fortune of utilizing him as a coach one year when I came back. Clark Whitten helped me at Hardin County, also was here, did a great job. Nick Cook, who was a former player as well, was an assistant. Lefty Skelton, and that's a weird dynamic to actually have your coach be one of your assistant coaches. So all those years that Lefty yelled at me, Gene, I want you to know I paid him back. But Lefty was a great help, and he's a great teacher of shooting, probably the best I've ever been around. And then Tim Dancer, another close friend. We grew up playing baseball, basketball together, and he was he and Brady both were trusty assistants those last couple of years I was here. I'd like to thank all the players from 1988 to 1999, and in those last 3 years, you're only as good as your players, and you try to develop a system that's going to cater to their talents, but there's never been a coach that's been successful without really good players. And the better your players are, the better coach you can be. So I'd like to thank all of those and the hard work they did. I'd like to thank my family. I'd like to thank Laura first. And usually at banquets, sometimes I would thank her last, but I want her to know how much I appreciate her. Those of you that's been in coaching and spouses that have been in coaching, you know how hard it is on the spouse. They have to be a psychologist. They've got to talk you through those ups and downs. Laura was my bookkeeper. She was scorekeeper for times. She was an assistant coach. I can remember, especially when she was working surgery and she started to work before I'd wake up, and she'd leave the door open to the bathroom as she's getting ready the morning after a game, and especially if it didn't go well, she would be curling her hair saying, you boys need to get your hands up on defense. You boys need to do this. You boys need to do that. And you know, when I went back and watched the film, some of those things that she was saying it in real time, and it was true. So she was a tremendous help, and I didn't always tell her that, but I want her to know that. And I want to appreciate the job that she and her father-in-law, or my father-in-law, did in keeping the officials straight. You know, sometimes the officials, Jerry Lott would never say this, but I will, they didn't always call it right. And somebody in the crowd has to help them. And so Laura was really good at doing that, and I appreciate that. Stephen, as he mentioned, he was a little fellow. We lived here the first time, and after the game, Jim and Bill would come to my house, Martha. I'd let you know that they broke curfew. She always had a tough curfew for her teachers, and we'd have to be in 11 or 12. But Bill and Jim would be at my house watching film on a Tuesday night and on a Friday night. Well, Stephen would, especially on Tuesday night, he'd like to sneak out of bed and come in there and watch film with us. And so he learned a lot of basketball by just doing that. But he was really good at doing that. Michael, I'll tell a story about Michael. Jim and Bill and I went to, I think it was we'd won our district tournament, and we went to Oman Arena to watch Bartlett and Hardin County play. And Michael's one of those guys, he likes to keep his stats. He would write the Cardinals players' names down. He knew all their stats. Well, he was keeping score this night at the Hardin County Bartlett game, and there was a kid named Tony Benton that played for Hardin County. Well, the next year, he was going to transfer to McNary. We heard he was wanting to transfer. So we were in the room talking, and I asked Bill, I said, Bill, what about this Benton kid? You know anything about him? No, I don't know. I said, Jim, what about him? He played at Hardin County. Remember, we were up there, they played Bartlett, and Jim said, I don't know anything about it. And Michael spoke up and said, oh yeah, Tony Benton, he was number 15, and he scored 12 points. He had kept notes that night on the game. So Michael was our scorekeeper. Chase is unable to be here. He's not feeling well today, so I hope he's watching on Facebook. By the way, Lisa, I appreciate you doing that. I'll tell you a story about Chase, and this is what keeps you humble. We go to Humboldt, it's a district game, and we rally, and Bill might remember this, we were playing man-to-man, and Glenn Tackett's team was just wearing us out. So I go to zone out of desperation. We can't guard them. We come back and beat them in overtime. It's a big district win on the road. So we race home on the bus. I run, get my stuff. I sprint to the truck. I run to Cox Lane. I go to the door. Chase meets me at the door, and I know he's going to say, Dad, great win at Humboldt. That's a district win. No. You know what Chase said? Daddy, guess what? Michael Jordan hit the winning shot at the buzzer, and the Bulls won. So that put me in my place. So he kind of humbled me. So that's the funny story I remember about Chase. I'd like to thank my parents. I tell everybody I'm a blend of my parents. My dad believed, he lived on a farm. He believed that when school was over, you're supposed to go home, get on the tractor, and plow. He says that sports got too important when the high school started practicing after school. And that's my dad. Here's my mom, Miss Competitive. They win the region championship her junior year at Mickey. That year they didn't have a state tournament. She's the type, she's so competitive, I'm telling you, if the Grizzlies or the Tennessee Vols lose, she can't sleep at night. She's that competitive. So I'm kind of a blend between dad and mom. But what they always did with 5 kids, we always had a basketball goal. And when we moved to Adamsville 2 years, and I apologize for that, Bobby, I was a Cardinal for 2 years. Daddy built us a goal, and he had a light, and we were up on the hill, and we played on that court forever. But Mother and Daddy, whether we had day games or wherever, they were always there. So I appreciate it, and that's hard to do with 5. We tried it with 3, so I appreciate everything they've done. Billy was my first basketball coach. We were at Mickey. Mr. Willard Smith was our coach, but he would get us out in the front yard, and he was playing for Lefty. I think he did a little bit of work with Marvin, and Billy would learn a drill, and he'd come home and try it out with us. So Billy was the first one that I saw tie Belinda's arm behind her back. I thought, what did she do to you, Billy? And what he did, he tied her strong arm behind her back and made her dribble with the left hand. And Belinda was always the best player at going left. Lefty and him would play through the tournaments, and everybody would shape Belinda to the right because she shot right-handed. But she was better actually going to her left because Billy tied her hand up. So, and I want to apologize for Deborah because in the article that Jeff wrote, I talked about how Billy taught Belinda, me, and Tim how to play. I left Deborah's name out. I want to apologize for her, and what I found out, she was actually on the phone that day I was talking about, and she wasn't on the court. But I will give Deborah credit. She's been our biggest supporter, and I appreciate everything. All my brothers, sisters. Tim's not here. He's moving his kids back to school today, but I would like to thank him for passing me the ball because he was the point guard. I'd like to thank Nina and Joe, my in-laws, who's always been there for us. Where we're in Dyersburg, Hardin County, McNary, they've been very supportive of us. I'd like to congratulate Caroline for being inducted. My granddaughter's named Caroline, so I'm kind of favor that name. Lucy, I want to tell a funny story about Lucy. Jerry and Danny may remember this. We had a huge, and Martha might remember, we had a huge shrimp dinner. It was going to be a fundraiser for a booster club. Well, at that time, Tom O'Neill was the booster club president. That's when all the sports had one booster club. Lucy was the tennis coach. So Terry Abernathy gets up, and this commons, is this full or more? And he said, I'd like to start off by welcoming all the new parents to this year's booster club meeting. We are working hard to overcome the controversy that we've just gone through. In case you don't know, we've just discovered that our booster club president has been sleeping with her tennis coach. And so that was kind of an icebreaker for the meeting. But you should have seen those parents that didn't know Terry and didn't know the situation. But Lucy and I worked together in the Park and Rec program. She took over for Bill. Bill had done a great job with the tennis program. Lucy came in and worked extremely hard and elevated the tennis program to new heights. And we appreciate, and she's certainly deserving of that. Delise, like I said, the beauty joke. She's very deserving as an athlete, very deserving as a coach. I will tell one funny story about her, if you don't mind. It was actually my last year here. After Martha had retired, Bill Heath was the principal and I was assistant principal. So one of my big jobs, Martha, was to go around the first day, is a real important job, I want you to know, and count and ask the teachers how many desks they needed. So I had to count how many people they had in their room and how many desks they had and figure out the difference. So I go by Miss Tiggs' room, who's teaching advanced, English or something. She had the smartest kids in the school. In fact, they may have been smarter than her, I'm not sure, but they were really smart. So I go, she's like D7 or something, maybe D5, okay. I never was good with numbers. But anyway, I'm going around, I walk into the room and I see 7 students. And I look at the desk, 24 desks. So I just politely asked, Miss Tig, do you need any more desks? And obviously she didn't. So whenever I would do something like Delise, she'd always shoot me. Y'all seen her do that? She just shoots you. So Delise, I had to get you on that one. And last but not least, Mr. Knoll. Now the true story is that was a faculty ball game, teachers against the students, and the loser was going to get a pie in the face. So unfortunately, the teachers lost, and Stacy got to put a pie in my face, didn't you? I got one for you, because Stacy got me in trouble, Danny, about the garbage can. There was another garbage can that was found missing. And it kind of happened like this. It was after lunch. Stacy loses his garbage can. So obviously, Stacy, that's a trend for you, buddy. So I get this call from the office. Dr. Glover says, Coach Brown, would you please come to the office? Well, I didn't know what's up. So I walk in the office. She says, Coach Brown, Stacy has lost his garbage can. Do you have his garbage can? I said, no, ma'am. I don't have his garbage can, but I know who does. She said, would you please tell me who has his garbage can? I said, Miss Glover, out of loyalty to my friend, I cannot tell you his name, but his initials are Dale Fisher. True story. Dale had your garbage can. So, as a player, I did come from Adamsville, and I came to Adamsville because Billy had graduated here, Deborah had been here, Belinda was here. We moved back to Eastview, and Coach Skelton gave me an opportunity to play varsity basketball, which was I kind of had mixed feelings. You know, you kind of wanted to play freshman with your guys, your class, and then Coach Skelton thought that I would benefit more by practicing against better players every day, because I think he could see maybe when that group of seniors graduated, he would be without a point guard. So I learned a lot from those junior, senior boys, I'll tell you that. It wasn't all about basketball either, but it was the best thing that happened to me. I played a little bit, set the bench, but I practiced every day against better players, and I had an opportunity to start for 3 years. Now, I'll tell you what's really tough is being a sophomore point guard with 4 seniors. So you know when Coach Skelton called a timeout, you know who he yelled at. He didn't yell at the seniors, he yelled at the sophomore. So I had to grow and be really tough. Then Coach Wooten came in our last 2 years. It was an adjustment. Coach Wooten coached a little different style, and Coach Skelton worked hard. It wasn't uncommon to have a 3.5, 4 hour practice with Coach Wooten. Very disciplined, you know, it's a very disciplinarian. But we had a season our junior year where we were rebuilding, but by our senior year, we were pretty good. And we beat Dyersburg here when they were ranked top 5 in the state. We actually ended up being runner-up, like Stephen said, in the district tournament. And I'll tell you, the team that won it was Fayette Ware. And I don't know if y'all remember a player by the name of Carlos Clark, who played at Ole Miss, went on to actually play for the Boston Celtics. Carlos was their 4th best player, if that tells you anything about how good they were. So we ended up finishing runner-up our senior year. In baseball, we loved playing for Coach Webb. Tim and I, Bo Whitaker, a lot of us freshmen played. We were on the varsity team. They didn't have freshman teams back then. I do remember one funny story. We really admired the seniors, Avon, Shelton, Blake, Johnny Blakely, and a lot of those boys. Back then, Martha, I wouldn't tell the principal this, but we could chew tobacco. Did you know that? Nobody thought anything about it. So we thought the seniors were cool, so they chewed tobacco and played baseball. So Tim and Bo and I, we were at Lexington, I still remember it, with no tops on the dugout. We decided we're going to try chewing tobacco. That was my first attempt. Everything was good until they hit a foul ball into the dugout and we fell down. We fell back to miss the ball and I swallowed that tobacco. So I want to promise you, I've never chewed tobacco again. But those were one of those things that we learned as being a freshman with those seniors. But our junior year was a really good year. We finished runner-up in the district. Our senior year, we ended up winning the district up in Jackson. We ended up winning and actually won runner-up to the region. And the region championship game was played the night after graduation, which was a tough night. But have a lot of fond memories. I thank Coach Webb, Coach Skelton, and Coach Wooten for the time that they spent with us and what they taught us, not only about the sport, but also about being young men. Some things about basketball coaching, it was special. I think that 12-year period that I was blessed to be boys basketball coach here, I think unequivocally I could say that McNair Central was not only the top school athletically, but academically, not only in West Tennessee, but in the state. We had an outstanding academic program. We had an outstanding athletic program. And our kids, I think, went in expecting to win in all our sports, not just hoping to win. The big highlight, the first game I ever coached was in the pit. That was O'Brien Central. We were down 16-0 before we ever scored. And we obviously lost that game. We came back. Our first game at home that year was against Melrose, who had a pretty good basketball tradition at the time. Ronnie Robinson was the coach. He played with Larry Finch in the 1973 NCAA championship game against UCLA, but Ronnie was our coach. That was our first win. Bill and I still can remember that. We won, after that O'Brien loss, that first year we won 19 games in a row. And all these teams had unique characteristics, so I don't want to disparage any of them, but these are some things we remember. The first district region championship, which you may have seen that picture with Stacy in it, we won that in 1989, and that was really special. We won 5 straight regular season championships. The 6th year we were playing at Southside, that would have been 6 in a row. Reggie Robinson sprains his ankle the day before we go, and we lose that game without Reggie by 1 point. We ended up winning the regular season the next year. That would have been 7 years in a row. So there was just real special times. I think a game a lot of us remember is the triple overtime game, region championship game here against Chester County was one that I'll remember a long time. Those 2 trips to the state tournament were really special. But a team that I'd like to brag on a lot is in 1995, we won 10 games. Our best player became ineligible at Christmas. You could do that back then. We lost our best player in January, end of January, to disciplinary reasons. That team won 10 games. We took the same group of players the next year, and they dedicated themselves. They didn't like losing. They wanted to make a change, and they ended up going from 10 wins to 25 that next year. That was really a special group, and that group was the one that ended up going to the state tournament. Those kids that had an opportunity to go beyond high school and play college and get an education, that's always something I take a lot of pride in, but a lot of credit goes to those young men and those families that pushed those kids at home, and that was certainly special for us, for them to have that opportunity. I learned one thing. It took me a while to figure it out, but you have to learn to listen to your players. I can remember we were at Hardin County in 1996. Scott Shelton was my nephew. He was the first relative I had coached, and we were down by about 20 points at Savannah. Scott makes a shot, and he looks at me, and he makes a signal, which he wants me to run this out of bounds set to him. And he made that shot. Scott went on a tirade. He scored about 16 points in the fourth quarter. We erased that big deficit to win. But that was just something that a player said, hey, he had a suggestion. You know, in my earlier days, I'd have said, no, it's my way or the highway. But listening to that, I'll tell you another true story. We were going in 1991 to play Trenton in the semifinals. Trenton was a real quick athletic team. We were a big, strong team, not very fast. Bill, Randy, and I decided we weren't going to press Trenton because they were too fast, too quick. We go up Highway 45. We're at the four-way stop at Trenton. At that time, it wasn't a red light. It was a four-way stop. We're in the van. Corey Porter, my point guard, looks at me and says, Coach, we are pressing Trenton tonight, aren't we? That was not in our game plan. We'd already talked about as coaches, we're not going to do that. We can't press them unless we're behind. I turned to Corey. I said, yeah, Corey, we're pressing. So I get to the dressing room. The kids come in. They file, go back to the bleachers, and the coaches run to me. He said, we're not really going to press Trenton, are we? I said, if those kids want to press Trenton, we're going to press them. And we started that game in a press, even though we didn't plan to do that. We went on about a 10-0 run, and that was the difference in that game. We ended up winning that game. So it taught me, listen to your players. They wanted to, so it didn't matter what my game plan was. If those kids believed it, then they could do it. So that taught me a great lesson there. Some things that we prided ourselves on was hard work. And when I first started coaching, Martha, and we were successful, coaches would meet at center line and say, good game, coach, your kids really played hard. And I didn't know how to take that. I thought, well, all teams play hard. But as I watched and learned that they really didn't. So I took that as a compliment because that's how we practice. When other coaches would talk about, well, Coach Brown, when we're playing you, your players on the bench are calling out our plays before we run them. And we had prepared for that. We felt like that gave us an advantage. So that was always a compliment for us. When we coached hard, we coached with passion. We held kids to standards. That's something in our society today, I think, that we've lost. You know, we're constantly in our society lowering standards. And as I've thought about that, you know what I really think it comes down to? I really think we're disrespecting our youth when we do that. So in other words, our parents could meet the standard, and we were asked to meet the standard. And why are we lowering the standards for our kids? Do we not think they're capable of doing like we did? So I want our society, and I know I'm preaching to the choir here, a lot of parents and grandparents, but I hope our young parents and young kids realize standards and accountability are really important. I never felt like I worked a day in my life. When I retired, that's what I told a guy who asked me some questions about my career. I said, I never felt like going to school was work. And I think young people keeps us young, being around young people. So I spent my first career in trying to teach teenagers about life. And basketball was a tool that we used. And this second career, I'm with Prudential now, and I get the opportunity to teach adults about their finances and about retirement. But I still am blessed to have that opportunity to share some information. We started as Blue Devils at Mickey years ago. That's where our parents grew up. So I tell everybody we were born a Blue Devil, and we were bred a Blue Devil. But when I die, I'm going to be a Bobcat. Thank you very much.
Thanks for the memories, Coach Brown.